Serious nurses and doctors of Reddit, what's your weirdest, scariest paranormal stories that took place during work? Did a rotation in a burn unit. There are tons of stories that go around, but I'll share my favorite. A pimp lit one of his prostitutes on fire, and she immediately bear hugged him, causing them to both suffer pretty severe injuries. Unfortunately, hers included an inhalation burn. They both were being treated in the same ICU but on opposite ends. Weeks later, she ends up coding and passes away, and after about 30 minutes, as things start to quiet down, the guy starts screaming from his room, "Get her out. Get the goddamn bitch out of my room." There is probably some medical explanation for this, but still the weirdest thing I've seen is a nurse so far. We had a very robust, confused old lady on our floor. Her room was in front of the nurse's station, so we could keep an eye on her, and had one of our nurse's aides as a sitter too. She was always fighting, kicking, trying to get out of bed. Very restless and agitated, as some patients I've had before can get before death. One day we were called into the room as her heart rate was going down, and she lay still with her eyes open. It was 30-20, then flat-lined. We checked for a pulse and did not find any. She was a DNR, so we did not attempt resuscitation. We close her eyes, prepare to get the body bag and call the family. The sitter remains in there to start getting the body ready. Less than 10 minutes later, she calls us back in. The old lady is at it again, hitting, kicking, trying to get out of the bed. She came back to life. Honestly, we found the situation hilarious, and I still have never seen any patient come back like that on their own. I think she made it out of the hospital too. I worked in a pediatric hospital and had always heard that the fourth floor right outside our oncology unit was haunted. I worked 3/12s normally, but would pick up overtime and picked up a night shift. I was working in the NICU, which happened to also be on the fourth floor, but on the opposite side. The oncology unit had a staircase that was a shortcut down to the cafeteria, which was on the second floor. At about 3 a.m. I was ready to take a short break and wanted a cup of coffee from the cafeteria, so I decided to take that staircase. I walked through the automatic double doors and saw a kid skipping down the hall. I called out to him as I was afraid a little kid had snuck out of a patient room. As soon as I called out to him, he turned and in the blink of an eye totally vanished. A lot of other nurses and docs had seen the same little kid skipping in that same hallway. Of course, I chalked it up to just exhaustion and didn't really think about it much after that. But you are damn sure I didn't use that hallway at night ever again. I was working at night and one of the patients died while I was in the room. We tried everything to revive this person, but it didn't work, so after doing the papers and everything, I went to another place in the hospital, and I swear to God that this patient who I saw dead touched my right arm. I think that I have never cried that much in my life. I used to work in a nursing home as both a CNA and an LPN, and while nothing too crazy happened, there were definitely things that happened out of the ordinary. I remember one time after someone had died, I was cleaning up her body and the door to the room swung wide open. Even though it had been firmly latched, nobody was there. It gave me the creeps. There were instances of furniture being moved, lights turning on and off by themselves, and toilets randomly flushing by themselves as well. I also remember I had one resident one night who asked me to make sure I closed the door to the closet that was at the end of her bed, and she told me that when it was open, that woman kept going in and out of it all night, and it kept her awake. A ward I worked on once had a patient who was a psychic medium as a patient. We had a bit of a laugh with her as she was on the ward for a while. She'd had a stroke which affected her mobility, and she would do readings for the staff, etc. from time to time. I took it all as just a bit of fun until one evening when she pressed her nurse call buzzer and told us to go check on a patient in a side room as he was dead. We went to check and sure enough found that the gentleman had died. Later on, we asked our psychic patient how she had known, and she told us she had seen him coming out of his room obviously distressed. She realized he had died and had to explain to him what had happened and help him to pass over. Go to the light now. I am not a believer, but that gave me the creeps. I'm a nurse. I've witnessed quite a lot with Alzheimer people. They often develop their own scenarios in their own head, often accompanied by vivid hallucinations. Once during night shift, I heard a woman scream in fear. Checking on her, she managed to climb into her wheelchair in pure panic, wanting to flee her bedroom. Asking what was wrong, she thought the building was on fire. Now, what's important to mention here is, people often make claims that people are just crazy or dreaming badly or something. But this is not the case. People with hallucinations have been found to actually see, hear, smell, etc. something when their hallucinations occur, as the same locations in the brain are stimulated, as if they would get real impulses. That woman actually saw fire. She actually smelled fire. She didn't just make that up to be crazy. It's what her brain told her was happening. And she was in real panic for her life. And the same applies to when those people see someone else in their room. When they want me to guide someone out of the bedroom who isn't actually there, seemingly standing right behind me. And it makes no sense to discuss with them that no one's there. To them, someone is there. And you better do your best effort of improvising to guide that someone, even if it's no one, outside. Play along, and they'll be fine. This, to me, is the scariest thing at work. They see something you don't. Worked in a nursing home long-term facility for multiple years. Personally hadn't experienced anything too crazy apart from mystery call LIGHTS call bell system going off, no buttons lit up, no rooms lit up, system would have to be reset from the electrical room to clear it. Hearing doors close shut, toilets flushing, faucets running. These were by no means commonplace. Other staff had some more direct experiences though, apparently in one hall a little girl would occasionally be seen walking. This had been reported by multiple staff as well as patients. A staff member was sitting out in her car during night shift when some woman who knocked on her window and quickly disappeared. The next day she was discussing this out loud with the oncoming shift when someone pulled out a picture from old files based on the description provided. Apparently, it was a match to a former patient that had passed away at least 10 years before that staff member was hired. Back when I was a paramedic in Oakland, I was taking care of an elderly gentleman in the back of my ambulance. He looked up into the upper corner of the ambulance and said, "It's okay, Lulu, I'll be with you soon." His daughter was with him and told me that Lulu was his wife who died 20 years earlier. A few minutes later he went into cardiac arrest and passed on. Okay, I am a nurse, but this did not happen to me, but several other nurses who worked at these units. There is a little girl who haunts the burn unit of a large military medical treatment facility in the US. She has been seen by both staff and patients. Haunts may not be the correct term, but she has been witnessed by several. Second, I used to work at the old Walter Reed Army Medical Center. In the old one that moved back in 2011, there was a VIP ward, I believe it was Ward 72. Any retired general officers would stay there, along with any higher-ups in the Gov, think Secretary of State and other cabinet officials. There was also a room for the First Lady and President. This ward is private, locked at all entrances and very nice. It is furnished with very high-end furniture, and a lot of it was donated by Mrs. Mamie Eisenhower, the wife of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Well, per my friend who worked there, the ghost of Mamie Eisenhower is very particular about anyone staying in her room, and if anyone did sleep in that room, she would yank off the bedsheets. My friends also said decorative pieces would randomly fall off table or fly off the walls when they were the only ones up there. Mamie would also apparently page the supervisor, who would call the ward back to a very confused nurse as to who paged them. Edit. I floated up there 2 to 3 times during my time there. My friend was on with me and told me all of this. I didn't believe her, so I went and sat in the room where Mamie would mess with people. I fell asleep, but sadly nothing happened that night. Sorry, I know you asked for nurses and doctors, but I couldn't help telling this one. Growing up, my maternal grandmother and I were always pretty sensitive to paranormal stuff, but my mother was not. She thought her mom was a crock, and she was sure I was making stuff up. Just as a preface. So while mom was in nursing school, she worked as a home health aide. She got a pretty cushy gig working with this disabled woman named Mary. I was too young to know what was wrong with Mary, but looking back now, I would guess she was someone who was mentally 5, though she was in her 50s. Mary's parents had provided well for her, left her with her own giant beautiful home fully equipped for a handicapped person, enough money in a fund to finance care, etc. So mom was one of only 4 staff to work with Mary because she did not like new people, 2 midnighters and 2 day staff. She received around-the-clock care, but mom was able to bring Mary home with her, so we spent a lot of time with Mary as a family. Mary was sweet and very kind. I actually have an old photo of me, her and mom when I was dressed for one of my dance parades. We all loved her to death. One morning, on a day mom was off work but had school, she got up in a rush and ran downstairs. I thought she was late to school, so I went down with her to help her get what she needed to leave. But she was on the phone dialing people who were not answering her. I will never ever forget this. Mom was shaking and crying, blubbering to herself without making any real sense. She finally slammed the phone down on the table and put her hands on her face, and I asked her what was wrong. She told me she had woke up to Mary at her bedside, patting her hand the way she did when she was very pleased with something Mom did, but when she sat up in bed Mary was gone. The phone rang, and it was the nurse at the house. Mary had passed away the night before. She came to tell Mom goodbye. She still never believed in the paranormal, but she did quit nursing school and never worked in home health again. She never said, but I got the sense she couldn't handle another Mary happening to her again. My mom was pretty stoic, but that broke her. Thank you for watching only on Reddit. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment about the most interesting story. And hit the bell if you don't want to miss any videos. Until next time.